the current situation in the country, the percentage of FDI in the GDP is around 1%. Whereas in other jurisdictions, similar emerging economies like India and Bangladesh and all, it is closer to 2%. There is a immediate need to increase the percentage of FDI to GDP at least by 2%.
If you look at in Sri Lanka, in the general context of things, people who provide services, when they earn foreign currency, it comes in, it's got to be mandatorily converted in certain instances. They collect their money via foreign currency. They can't utilize it as and when they are at their discretion. So there are a number of restrictions, number of limitations. So these are some of the concerns that need to be addressed very clearly to enable these businesses that are out there looking to come in and operate within the Colombo Port City.
Several decades ago, Sri Lanka established industrial zones, or what we call free trade zones, for exporters, offering manufacturing industries a more business-friendly climate to establish their factories. Now, Colombo's Port City aims to do the same for service sector businesses, serving mainly global clients. Now, what does this all mean for Sri Lanka and for ordinary Sri Lankans? In the studio with us are two gentlemen who are closely involved in the project, and they are Mr. Nayeemudeen, who is the Secretary to the Ministry of Investment Promotion, and Revan Wickramasuriya, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the Colombo Port City Economic Commission. So, Mr. Nayeemudeen, Revan Wickramasuriya, thank you for joining Echelon. Shall we start with this, Mr. Nayeemudeen? We'll start with the genesis of the whole thing, right? Can you tell us and explain to us about the ownership of Port City Colombo? Is it Chinese owned? Is it government owned? Is it a hybrid kind of structure? What is the ownership like?
The Port City, it is a reclaimed land, we all know. Around 269 hectares of lands. It is solely belongs to government. It is a state land.
Sure.
Colombo Port City Economic Commission had been established in 2021. And after the establishment, the government has given a freehold grant in the name of Colombo Port City Economic Commission under State Land Ordinance. Yeah, and this is the deed of...
okay, that's very reassuring to see that. Okay.
This is a deed of,
of the grant to the Colombo Port City Economic Commission. Right.
Therefore, this is solely a state land, and under State Land Ordinance, and Colombo Port City Economic Commission has granted a freehold grant.
Right. Let me bring you in. That's very relevant there, Revan. Revan Wickramasuriya is the COO of the Economic Commission, Colombo Port City Economic Commission. So now that this land has been given as a grant to the Economic Commission, what's the Economic Commission's role in this whole structure?
So the Economic Commission came about in 2021, May 2021, via the passing of the Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act by the Parliament that empowered or created a body, a 7-member body, to administer all activities that are taking place within this piece of land that it was entrusted with. In the Act, it speaks of the area of authority of the Colombo Port City.
Sure.
So the Commission's role is to make sure that all activities that take place within that area of land, or the businesses that operate in line with the legislative powers within, or as entrusted in the Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act.
So when we loosely discuss the law underlying the Colombo Port City, are we referring to this Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act generally?
Absolutely correct. So it is simply a special economic zone that has been created, and Sri Lanka is not new to special economic zones. Mr. Nayeemudeen would actually say, I think we have about 14 of them currently.
15 of special economic zone, but this is special economic zone, meant for service-oriented.
Right.
The rest essentially were set up from the 1980s onwards, I think, and are more oriented towards manufacturing for export. for export. So when you say service oriented, does this mean the port city is also looking at serving global customers or
Yes.
clients, or
Yeah.
will it be looking at Sri Lanka?
Global customers, yeah.
Right.
And this is maybe international companies, multinational companies, their regional offices, and maybe the IT companies and multinational IT companies, they can serve from here.
Right. Now, there's a basic question here, Mr. Nayeemudeen, in that, why can't these companies set up in Sri Lanka per se, in Colombo per se, and do what they would otherwise now go to Port City to do? What is the benefit they get out of Port
First
City?
of all, I don't think any difference between, setting up in Colombo Port City and setting up in other part of the country, because this is Colombo Port City in part and parcel of Sri Lanka. And, this is the Gazette, published in somewhere in 2019. Port City is part of Colombo district.
Sure. Right.
And therefore, and even though if we differentiate and Port City, it is a part of Colombo, it is part of Sri Lanka.
Revan, same question to you. So what's what's the clinch of a deal here, right? Why would a company want to locate in the Colombo Port City and not say in Colombo Fort, which is just adjacent?
So I think, as we mentioned earlier, Sri Lanka is not new to special economic zones, right? 15 of them, as the Secretary pointed out, and these go back over 45 years, right? So you have always had special economic zones all over the country, which are created to attract specific types of businesses, right, to sit and operate within those zones, right? And then there is a certain structure that is created that would facilitate these businesses to do the objective or meet the objectives and do the types of businesses they're expected to do. And for that purpose, you create this special economic zone.
So in the manufacturing special economic zones, we call these the free trade zones, I think, in common parlance in Sri Lanka, right? I think they offer slightly better conditions for investors. More groundwork has been done, the infrastructure is better, and it's easier to bring goods in and take, bring raw materials in and take goods out, right? That's the advantage. What would an investor find as an advantage in the Port City?
First of all, this is a single window investment facilitation, arrangements within the Port City. Even if you take the special economic zone, managed by the BOI, Board of Investment of Sri Lanka, the same concept.
Right.
But whereas in Colombo Port City is more specific, and we have a piece of regulations called DCR, Development Control Regulation. It is already passed by the Parliament. And we have 74 marketable lands, and also there are public lands, and the DCR very clearly says in the developments going to be happen in each and every plot of land. What is the building, or it is an open area, and if it is a building, what is the width and what is the height, everything is really mentioned. If an investor coming to Colombo Port City, he doesn't go to Urban Development Authority or Central Environmental Authority or any government organizations. Everything will be facilitated through this single window investment facilitation arrangement in the Port City.
So when you're talking about investors here, Revan, are you essentially referring to those who come and those who will come and put the infrastructure up, the high-rise buildings, the residential units, etc.? Or are you referring to those who will start businesses using those facilities? Or are you referring to both? And what's the difference between the two? Are these two types of investors?
I think you're absolutely correct. So there are two types of investors. And when you look at special economic zones in other parts of the world, right, whether you go to Gujarat in India or you go to Dubai, DMCC, DIFC, the governments create these zones, and then the governments also contribute to putting up what we call the vertical infrastructure, the buildings, the high-rise buildings. In this situation, the land reclamation was done, and we're looking for investors to come in and do the vertical constructions, the buildings to come in with the high-rise commercial spaces, retail spaces, residential spaces, and then we're looking at the next level of businesses to come in and base themselves out of these businesses and carry on their activities. So you'll have two types of businesses, two types of investors.
Right. Mr. Nayeemudeen, so how does the government benefit out of this? Now, you made it clear that this land, underlying land, is owned by the government, is part of the Colombo municipal area. What's the benefit to the government of this project, particularly over the long term?
Yeah, government benefits in many ways. I mean, first of all, of course, it is a foreign direct investment.
Sure.
All right, that is the first thing, FDI. But if you take the current situation in the country, the percentage of FDI in the GDP is around 1%. Whereas in other jurisdictions, I mean, similar emerging economics like India and Bangladesh and all, it is closer to 2%. Therefore, there is immediate need to increase the percentage of FDI to GDP by at least by 2%. And we feel and we firmly believe and the investments which is going to be happen in the Port City, that will contribute to increase the percentage of GDP, FDI contribution to GDP. That is first thing.
Sure.
And the second thing, it is of course employment generation, and also technical know-how, and our country is going to be benefit out of these foreign companies, right? And those things will be, benefit to our country in the long term.
Have these sorts of benefits transpired in other countries where such special economic zones are prevalent? China has a lot of them, Dubai, etc. If you just take a broad view, Revan, do these zones work out?
No, I think that's clear, right? When you look at you brought up Dubai, right? They've got multiple special economic zones, and clearly that country has seen the benefit out of it, right? You look at India, you look at Malaysia, right? And let's not go there. Sri Lanka started with special economic zones 40 years ago, 45 years ago, and they're still continuing to expand that, right? Because there is a benefit. There's thousands of employment opportunities created. You get foreign know-how coming in because, as Mr. Nayeemudeen mentioned, it's about attracting foreign direct investment. So even in this special economic zone, to do the vertical constructions, right? I think to build it all out, they expect the development cost to be anywhere between $8 to $12 billion, right? That capital has to come in from overseas, right? So with that comes in, stimulates the economy, creates employment opportunities, etc. Globally, economic zones exist and continue to thrive is clearly due to the fact that there is significant value created to the nation, the country that these are set up in.
Right. Is the Port City Special Economic Zone, Mr. Nayeemudeen, ready to take in investment currently? What state is it in? And we just before this we discussed that there potentially be two types of investors: those that put up the infrastructure, bring FDI for that, and those who will locate their organizations, businesses in the city. What state are we in right now?
Actually, when it comes to horizontal development, that is almost completed.
Yeah, that's the
right?
land accumulation.
Yeah, and also apart from that, and we have to provide. We have a tripartite agreement. And this is government of Sri Lanka and also Port City Economic Commission and also the investor. Right. According to the tripartite agreement, each and every party has to some obligations.
Sure.
And the government obligation is to provide water, electricity, and also sewerage, facilities to Colombo Port City. That is ready, and most probably next month, by May, we'll be able to provide water, electricity, and also sewerage connection, and that will be completed. And apart from that, horizontal development, that is almost completed. Right. Therefore, and even when it comes to regulations, the development regulations already passed by the Parliament. It is ready, but still, and some more regulations to be passed, and especially when it comes to banking regulations. It's still under discussion with the central bank, and we hope it will be completed very soon.
Right.
And therefore, it is ready for investment. Yeah.
Sure. So before this we discussed. You mentioned the Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act. This is the underlying law. Now, Mr. Nayeemudeen suggests that there's a certain set of regulations that are necessary for for the banking financial operations, the so-called International Financial Center, I think, right? Revan, what is the purpose of those regulations? What does the Port City intend to do with that?
So I think the first point is any business activity that happens within the Colombo Port City is for businesses to serve their customers, their counterparts that are based outside of Sri Lanka, offshore, right, i.e. non-resident, right? So when these businesses come in, they would be receiving all their income in foreign currency, right? They would be needing to make payments to people overseas in foreign currencies, etc. So one needs to come out with regulations from a banking and financial services perspective that actually ring fences the transactions done in foreign currency by the businesses that are authorized under the Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act. So if you look at in Sri Lanka and in the general context of things, people who provide services, when they earn foreign currency, it comes in, it's got to be mandatorily converted in certain instances. They collect their money via foreign currency. They can't utilize it as and when they are at their discretion. So there are number of restrictions, number of limitations. So we need to address those, right? So these are some of the concerns that need to be addressed very clearly to enable these businesses that are out there looking to come in and operate within the Colombo Port City. So these are some of the areas that are being addressed via the proposed banking regulations.
So does that mean that there is only potential for foreign companies, those that are incorporated based overseas, to come and set up business here? Is there an opportunity, Mr. Nayeemudeen, for Sri Lankan companies too that perhaps serve global clients to work through Port City?
No, there is no restriction at all, but only thing is the basic the approval. I mean, any person who is coming inside the Port City, and he or she, I mean, the company should be an AP, I mean,
Authorized person.
Authorized person.
Right. And
That
then
is the basic requirement.
That is granted by the Economic
Commission. Economic Commission, yeah.
Right. So then you look at it from a Sri Lankan company or Sri Lankan business perspective, and I'm a business, what sorts of businesses are most likely to find business case to be based out of Port City or be an authorized person at Port City?
Actually, it is any type of service-oriented businesses. There may be IT or trade or whatsoever. It's possible. And at the moment, we have around 60 companies already approved AP status, right? Out of that, there are IT companies, there are
trading companies, advisory companies.
Yeah. Those are Sri Lankan origin companies, and yeah.
So does that mean that at some point they will have to move their employees and other infrastructure into the Port City physically to be able to utilize the benefits of that?
Absolutely. So when you're an authorized person, right, you have to be and carrying on the business with your offshore counterparties as per the approvals granted. The requirement is to be based within one of the vertical constructions within the area of authority of the Port City.
Right. So what happens to all these people they employ? They employ a lot of Sri Lankans, and you could wonder, okay, does that qualify every Sri Lankan then to be, does that change the status of employment? Does anything have to change? Or is it simply you're moving your office?
There is no restriction for an authorized person to employ any person they wish to, right? So they can either employ Sri Lankans or they can employ foreigners. So there's absolutely no restriction from that perspective. It is up to the company that's established and got the license to decide who they want to hire and from where they want to employ that person.
For a Sri Lankan private sector organization, sometimes it's a little bit more complex to hire a foreign employee. Maybe for very specialist task or for a network they bring you. Some companies may wish to hire certain foreign employees. Is this process simpler in the jurisdiction of the Port City?
Yes, very simple. Very simple, and also and when it comes to visa, of course, and recently there is a visa policy, special visa policy approved by the Department of Immigration and Immigration, and it covers. Very simply, you can hire anyone. The visa is not an issue.
The visa is not an issue,
Yeah.
And I suppose does that mean also that Sri Lankan employees of these companies must be compensated or remunerated in Sri Lankan rupees, foreign currency, optional? It's up to the company. How does it work?
Not at all. Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act, May 2021, it clearly stipulates that any employee of an authorized person has to be remunerated in foreign currency or a designated foreign currency other than Sri Lankan rupees.
Right. So, okay. So then the employment, if they are currently employed within Sri Lanka in a rupee contract, then that contract has to change if that company moves the employees to the port city.
I wouldn't say if that company moves, right? It's a company licensed within the port city, right, would be licensed to do certain types of businesses.
Right.
And if that business, that entity starts hiring people, right, anybody they hire has to be paid in a designated foreign currency.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, the reason behind this is what is the port city trying to do, right? They are looking at building approximately 6.3 million square meters of GFA, right? They're looking at attracting approximately 300,000 people to live and work there, right? The idea is to attract the businesses that are going and setting themselves up in Dubai, in Singapore, in Mauritius, in all these areas to come and base their staff and operate out of here. So Singapore, for example, operates as a regional office for many companies. As much as Dubai operates as a regional zone. We look at the location of Colombo from a time zone perspective. We look at Colombo from the perspective of all the large major cities in the South Asian subcontinent, right? Colombo by far would rank very high in terms of ease of livability, the beauty of the city, etc.
Climatic
conditions, etc. But we are not seeing the businesses come and set up here. We are seeing the businesses going and setting up in Dubai. We're seeing the businesses go to Singapore. We're seeing Sri Lankan businesses go and establish themselves in Dubai. The question is why? Can we create an environment where the Sri Lankan businesses don't go to Dubai? Can we create an environment where the big Indian service companies are locating to the Middle East, to Singapore, to consider Sri Lanka as an option? And that is the vision of the government in creating the special economic zone under the Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act.
How does the Economic Commission ensure that there is transparency and a level playing field? Is that a function of the Economic Commission? What are the dynamics of that?
I think that's absolutely critical, and creating transparency in everything that is done is most important, right, to make it a success, right? And that's what drives businesses to come in and establish themselves in a certain jurisdiction. So from the onset, the Commission's objective has been to drive as much transparency as possible. As Mr. Nayeemudeen mentioned, immediately one of the first things they did was they came up with a visa framework, right? Immediately that was published, that was gazetted. You're given 5-year visas if you meet certain conditions. You're given a 10-year visa if you meet certain conditions. That's out there. Then we came up with the application process, right? That also from day dot is an online process, right?
Application as in
to become an authorized person, right? The fees are paid electronically. You submit your data, you submit all the information electronically. Then all the other regulations that we've come up with, right? From the business of strategic importance regulations that talk about the incentives and exemptions given, everything is out there on the website, absolutely transparent for everybody to see, right? And there is no situation where somebody can get something, somebody else can get something else. So that is something that we have, we ensure is applied in creating any structure.
Right. Mr. Nayeemudeen, now Revan outlined the law and the subsequent regulations that have already been put in place. Like, it appears that only the regulations pertaining to the International Financial Center have to be finalized before everything is in place.
Sorry, if I can correct you there. Yeah. It's not the regulations for International Financial Center. It is the Banking and Financial Services regulations.
Right.
Yeah.
So is it fair to think that it's only the banking and financial services sector center regulations that have to be now finalized? Everything else is in place?
Almost.
Right.
Almost.
There are a few other areas that the Commission is looking at. Again, this is a brownfield project, right? So the more you talk to the businesses, as we mentioned, there are about 60 odd authorized persons have come in. Once they start looking at operationalizing, they've raised a couple of questions. So there could be other pieces of regulation, etc., that we look at sort of coming in to actually facilitate these businesses being established. And one of the objectives of the Act, right, when you look at, I think, Section 6 of the Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act, one of the objectives laid out by the government for the Commission is clearly to increase Sri Lanka's ranking in ease of doing business. Right? So that is a cornerstone in everything what the Commission is trying to do.
And that is mentioned in the Act.
In the Act, yeah.
Right. Sure.
One of the objectives of, I think, comes in Section 5 of the Colombo Port City Economic Commission Act. One of the objectives clearly states is improve Sri Lanka's ranking in the ease of doing business.
In conclusion, Mr. Nayeemudeen, anything you think we need to add to round up this conversation?
Usually, in Colombo, even though we call it Colombo Port City, and it is a city, and there are school and university, hospital, and residential, apartments and luxury villas and business center. And it is state of the art, facilities will be available for any business if they come and establish. And all the facilities are available.
These facilities, will they be open to also Sri Lankans to use if they can? And do they have to pay to use these facilities in foreign currency?
It's I don't think. And this is, if it is, and if they come as an AP, it is a different one. But in order to utilize the facilities,
so the Act, if I can come in there, so the Act specifically speaks to retail facilities, right? Yes. Any services offered by retailers, right? That's from shops to cinemas to malls to restaurants to whatever. Again, in the primary legislation, they have to be offered to Sri Lankan residents in Sri Lankan rupees. Right? So there's no issues for retail type of transactions. It is only the businesses, right? When I talk about businesses, the services, the IT companies, the advisory companies, the trading companies who are dealing with counterparts offshore, right? They have to deal in foreign currency.
And some of the developments there will include residential units. These would ideally be targeted at buyers from overseas.
Yes.
Many of the residential units.
Even Sri Lankans, it's open for everyone.
So as long as they can pay for it in foreign currency.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Revan, any final thoughts that you have?
I think Colombo Port City can and will be an amazing success and will contribute significantly to the economy as a whole. I think it's important that everybody gets behind it and trusts and believes in what the government is trying to achieve via the Colombo Port City Special Economic Zone.
Mr. Nayeemudeen, Secretary to the Ministry of Investment Promotion, Revan Wickramasuriya, Chief Operating Officer, Colombo Port City Economic Commission. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you,
It's a
Shamya.
pleasure, of course.
Pleasure being here.